Good evening, everyone. My name is David Freese. I'm the mayor of Tonganoxie. I'm calling to order this March 20th, 2023 regular meeting of the Tonganoxie City Council. Ms. Huntington, would you note that I am present and call the roll, please?
Yes, Mayor. Mr. Partridge?
Here.
Ms. McCutcheon?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Mr. Donnelly?
Here.
Mr. Dale?
Here.
Would you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, everyone. This item 2 on the agenda is the approval of minutes, where we go over the minutes from the previous meeting. Did anyone have any questions or concerns about the minutes?
Motion to approve is presented.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Partridge. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 on the agenda is the consent agenda, where we review the bill payments from the previous period. Are there any questions or concern about the review, about the bill payments?
Is the BG, is that water tower related?
It includes a pretty significant payment for the sewer plant design, actually. So it's a little bit abnormally large compared to a normal building. There is a little bit of water tower expense in there
Most
too.
of it's sewer.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 on the agenda is old business, and there is none. Mr. Porter, did anyone sign up to speak tonight?
No signups, Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to new business, resolution number 03-2301, approving and authorizing the execution of the 2023 extension agreement between the City of Tonganoxie, Kansas and Honey Creek Disposal Service LLC. Mr. Brakovich.
Thanks, Mayor. For this item, the city has a longstanding relationship with Honey Creek. They do a great job. That's not to say that we don't have an issue here or there, but their ability to mitigate and resolve issues in a timely manner with good customer service is a pleasure to work with in that regard. They are not, and our current contract allows us to do 2-year extensions without reopening for bid. Anna's reviewed that, and that's what we're proposing here tonight is another 2-year extension. I did want to kind of talk a little bit about the rate structure. They're not proposing any changes, and our monthly trash collection fees haven't changed since 2019. Curbside recycling hasn't changed fee structure since I believe 2014. And we are the beneficiaries in that Honey Creek has other municipalities in regional locations that they try to structure all the cost equally. The one thing though that they've encouraged us to do in the past is increase our participation in curbside recycling. Some of the other cities that we get the benefit of sharing the same cost across the board for trash and recycling, those cities are located in counties where the county has mandated if curbside recycling is available, households have to do that. And in Leavenworth County, obviously we don't have that mandate. And so we really struggle with participation. I think since I've been here in the 6 years, I think we've rarely been over 20% participation. It seems like a lot of new residents come in, sign up for it, but a lot of our existing clients haven't. And I've never felt any pressure from Honey Creek to say you've got to increase your participation with curbside recycling to maintain that same billing structure that we get in the other communities. But they've certainly asked us to, beef up our efforts marketing wise to get an increase in participation. So since we're talking about it tonight, I wanted to make sure that you all were aware of the favorable pricing we get, but we're not really hitting those performance marks on curbside recycling. So Having said all that, we are very supportive of another 2-year extension, and would stand for any other questions you might have this evening. Thank you.
Council, do you have any questions?
Surely it's not the fee that people don't want to pay. That's not very much, but some people may have a problem with it.
Yeah, I don't, I'm not sure. We can maybe do a poll of those that aren't participating, and quite frankly, for people that live in other areas that do have curbside recycling, most communities don't offer glass, and Honey Creek does as part of their service. So I mean, I know it's another $4.50 a month, but it is a good service. So, we'll do our part to encourage the increased participation.
Any other questions or conversation? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 03-23-01, approving and authorizing the execution of the 2023 extension agreement contract for solid waste and recycling collection between the City of Tonganoxie, Kansas and Honey Creek Disposal Service, LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Ms. Stevens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item B, resolution number 03-23-02, consideration of award of bid and approval of contract for 2023 street infrastructure maintenance project with Metro Asphalt. Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mayor. We're excited to present this item to you tonight. Last week, we closed the bid period for the RFP that was authorized by the City Council back in February, on February 21st, and we issued the RFP the next day with notices on the city website, in contacts sent out to regional vendors, prior bidders, and also on the Tonganoxie Mirror as required by our procurement policy. We did receive a great amount of interest this year. We received 7 bids in total, which was outstanding. I think our past high is actually 6 for similar projects, and the scale of the project scope is probably one factor that we think led to a lot more interest from local vendors. The agenda packet includes quite a bit of information, but I'll turn to page 2 of the agenda statement for this item that describes the project areas. If you recall, this project was split into a base bid, which was comprised of 8 kind of subcomponents of the project, and those comprised the majority of the proposed scope of the work. We also built in an add alternate 1, which was 2 connection points. One was Woodfield Drive from Lamming Road to Stone Creek Avenue, and the second was the Willow Point subdivision, which is essentially Willow Point Circle and East Sycamore Street, just east of Tonganoxie Drive. And so it's a smaller area, and the intent of that design was to allow you all to contemplate accepting the base bid and the add alternate, or just the base bid, if you prefer, based on cost outcomes. When we looked at the cost outcomes, the summary on page 2 of the agenda statement shows for the 7 bidders, a base bid amount, add alternate amount, and then the total bid. We were excited to see that our projection of potential cost for the entirety of the project was well placed, that we came in under that. We had 3 bidders come in under $600,000 for the level of work, which we calculate as touching about 18% of the city's street network. So it's an extensive scope of work, mostly on the eastern portion of the city road network area. When we look at budget impact, there are 2 costs to consider. One, the vendor for the mill and overlay services, and the second being traffic markings on the pavement. So when mill and overlay happens, you lose the old pavement surface, any markings on crosswalks or road boundaries or center lines, and those have to be repainted. And we've collected bids from another vendor, Twin Traffic Marking Incorporated, for that scope of work as well. So moving to page 3, the final page of the agenda statement for this item, we want to highlight a couple things. When the city built the budget back in the summer of 2022 for this year, we looked at total expenses of around $480,000 for the entirety of the street maintenance program. Now, obviously, a bid total with the ad alternate of $533,000 comes in ahead of that. But the good news is we do have some good levels of funds in the special highway fund that we want to highlight. The chart on the agenda statement shows that at 2020 year end, we were just under $400,000 in funds available. 2021 year end, we were at about $625,000. And last year, at the end of December, we closed the fiscal year at about $820,000 in funds available. So some of this is attributable to past projects coming in under budget. The curb replacement project last year in Willow Point subdivision was a particularly good bid outcome for our expectations. In addition, we've had large commercial and industrial developments that have converted green space to new building activity. And so those all pay an excise tax of 9 cents per square foot when they bring in a building permit for those previously undeveloped properties. And that excise tax goes to help us fund street projects. So we have close to 40 acres for the Hills Pet Nutrition site in the industrial park, as well as the city's sale of the Dollar General Market site on 2440 right-of-way, just to highlight a few of the larger parcels that contributed to that growth in fund balance that was frankly unprecedented, that the city's special highway fund has looked this good with resources. So to kind of sum that up, the work that's included in this scope of work is not the entirety of our street projects for the year. Kent and the Public Works crew do plan to do, in addition to the bid work that we're talking about tonight, to do Church Street from 3rd Street to 4th Street, mill and overlay, some parallel parking on the south side of the library property, improvements, as well as a resurfacing of the 4th Street bridge deck, which has some potholes in place. And you can see some of those project work sites. Actually, they're not on this map because this is the contract work. And so factoring in costs for those, as well as commodities Kent uses to address potholes or curb replacements on a as-needed basis, if we were to accept the entirety of the base bid and add alternate 1, we do anticipate that we would need to complete a budget amendment in the amount of about $151,000. That would still leave us with at least $669,000 in funds available in the special highway fund. So it is our recommendation as staff that you consider approving the full contract scope of work. The funds available are more than sufficient to prepare us for future projects and future costs with our street network. And we do feel that this is a good opportunity to touch, like we said, almost 18% of the city's road network with mill and overlay services. Kent's here tonight too to address anything I missed, and George and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have as well.
Any questions, council?
Dan, 2 questions.
Yes.
Does the remaining balance, if we approve the entire thing, does that exceed or equal to our policy that we've talked about I don't remember the exact number on that.
This fund doesn't have an exact number or a percentage. It's really project focused. So as we look ahead and see CMIP projects with roads, we sort of ad hoc approach that. In the past, we've been about 250 to 300,000 is a pretty typical amount going back 6 or 7 years to the old days, I guess we'd say.
And Ken, are you comfortable with Metro? You used them before?
20 years or something.
Have we used them before? We have not. Okay. How does this bid compare to past bids from a cost per square yard?
I think it's pretty comparable. I honestly didn't
Pull
compare
that up.
2 years ago.
I just wonder how much costs are rising and.
I can pull that up. It was
Since they all came in pretty close together, and there was not a one outlier, really high or really low, that's kind of reassuring that at least they're in the same relative space in terms of their expected outlay for supplies and those types of things. Whether they've gone up or not, it seems to be kind of the going rate.
And I think, and you'll see later this evening in the financial report, a little more detail on the history, but, you know, if you think about the scope of street maintenance projects, we've had things like asphalt rejuvenation where we're just trying to preserve the life of the existing asphalt, all the way to what's the most, I guess, the heaviest construction for us is mill and overlay. And so we haven't done a lot of mill and overlay projects because we've been able to impact a lot of roads with those asphalt life extension type products. This year, it's heavy on the mill and overlay part of it, and so there's a price tag premium associated with that level of work. So the other thing that we were navigating around in these bids was a price index for oil prices, with the potential for them to fluctuate like they have been doing the last few years. But I do believe that the low bid is a price guarantee. We did clarify that with them. So.
Mr. Dale, I found an old bid from 2 years ago, the last time we did mill and overlay. It looks like the prices are really, really close with the winning bid that year at 5 cents a square yard more now, which is an increase of less than 0.5%
Okay.
from that
Thank you.
outcome.
Thank you. Personally, I think with costs going up on almost everything, it surprises me that there's that little of cost increase, but I certainly wouldn't expect them to go down. So probably less expensive to do the whole thing now than it would be in the future.
And this is our biggest job we've done.
We're getting hungry for jobs. There are not as many as there used to be.
Yeah.
Am I reading this right? We expect the construction project to be done on August 1st?
That's our due date with the 2-month extension option. That's been our traditional schedule, and most times in the past, they've pushed us to kind of the end of the list, so we've actually wrapped up in September, October even. But this year, Metro Asphalt actually conveyed to Kent after the bid opening that they wish to place us a lot quicker on their list. Some of that oil index concept might be factoring in, and the scale of our job is also bigger as opposed to prior years. So from what we've heard to date, they would start sooner than later and not wait till late summer.
Okay.
We need 2 motions on this, correct?
That's correct, Mayor. If the wish is to go with the base bid and the ad alternate, we have a second motion in the agenda packet for the striping quote for the entirety of that scope of work.
Okay, if there is no more conversation, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 03-2302, approving and authorizing the execution of the Construction and Technical Services Agreement, parenthesis, 2023 Mill and Overlay Street Maintenance Project between the City of Tonganoxie, Kansas, and Metro Asphalt, Inc. for an amount not to exceed $533,000, or $98.00.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion for the second item?
I'll make a motion to approve the quote for the 2023 Tonganoxie Mill and Overlay Stripping Project quote from Twin Traffic Marking, Inc. for a cost not to exceed $26,420.
Thank you, Mr. Partridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item C, consider recommendation to adjust library board membership. Mr. Porter?
Thank you, Mayor. We received this request from the library board and the library director, Max Wirestone. They reached out several weeks ago citing a request that the library board unanimously supported, which was to move from the current structure of 10 members down to the 7-member structure that was previously in place. If you're not aware, in 2015, the library board was increased from 7 to 10 members to meet growing demands for the board participation and work level and the ramp up for the new library construction, which was actually completed back in 2020. We do have some requirements by city charter ordinance to consider, one of which is Charter Ordinance 18, which requires that 5 members of the library board be residents of the city of Tonganoxie, with the remainder able to be residents of USD 464, so outside the city limits, but in the school district limits. Moving back to a board membership of 7, from a full board might pose a problem because you'd have people and necessarily some non-city residents that would require removal to meet that. But in the last 6 months, actually, starting last September with 1 resignation and 2 more in November and December of last year, the board actually has winnowed down to 7 from 10. And so looking at the current membership, which is included in your agenda packets for this item, there is the ability to just basically remove the 3 vacant positions, and you would still end with 5 city positions and 2 school district positions with currently occupied seats. When we look at the terms, there's also a majority of the terms that I think all but 1 do come due for reappointment or for reconsideration in 2024. So each of these 7 current members do have, in the next 2 years, either an opportunity to renew or have other people inserted into the board. Staff don't have a rationale of doing this or not doing this, but it is the full request of the entirety of the 7 current members of the board to move to this structure. And one huge advantage by reducing the board, you reduce the quorum from 6 members down to 4. And that would pose a huge benefit to that board in the event they have people out for illness or unavoidable absences. So right now with 7, only 1 person can be gone and still meet their quorum of 6 out of 10. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Anna's reviewed this and the information we have from old city ordinances, and we don't have any other concerns to mention to you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Are there any questions?
The charter ordinance, when did that go into play that we had to allow, or that we agreed to allow, that we didn't have to? People outside the city limits to be on the, and if I heard you correctly, you read it to say inclusive of USD 464 area.
Mm-hmm.
Do you off the top, I mean, that's been there a while.
It's a few, yeah, we're on Charter Ordinance 29 now, and that was 18. I can pull that up, it'd just take me 1
You
second.
might look that up, I'd be anxious to understand that.
Since this doesn't have any budget impact for the city and the library voted unanimously to keep it, and they're at 7 members right now, I don't see any issue with it.
Mr. Donnelly, that was back in March of 2008. The Charter Ordinance 18 was approved. And it doesn't stipulate they have, I mean, obviously they have to because they're either in the district or the city, but it could be 7 people all in the city limits. There's no required balance of in and out of the city limits.
Any further questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I would make a motion to approve the Tonganoxie Library's recommendation to approve, library board, my apologies, recommendation to approve the elimination of 3 currently vacant positions on the Tonganoxie Library Board and reduce the size of the board to 7.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Ms. McCutcheon. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to the city manager agenda. Mr. Brakovich.
Yes, Mayor, we have one item listed there, that's the financial report, and I'll ask Mr. Porter to get to that in just a second. I did want to give you another update on the Caldwell tank. You'll recall in February at the city council meeting on the 21st, we heard from company representatives talking about delays they had experienced on projects that were in the queue prior to coming to the water tower project here at the Tonganoxie Business Park, and the potential delays that they might see here. They had a letter communicating to us. They were looking for a 110-day extension, and they had referenced a completion early or mid-July, and then they had a Gantt chart in that proposal that actually called out July 12th. As we reviewed those submittals, the 110-day extension didn't correlate to any date in July, and so we had asked them, before we consider anything, you need to clarify exactly what you're asking for. So we did that with the hopes of getting that clarified as an action item before you on March 6th. We did not hear any communication from them. We've repeatedly reached out to them asking for that communication. They are communicating on several other fronts related to the project, and some activity that we're seeing from Evergy on site as well. But as of today, they still hadn't given any sort of a clarification. Now, as a side note, I will mention they're making significant progress on the pedestal construction, and likely will be completed with the pours for the pedestal construction in the next 2 weeks. And our construction observation individual, John Carlson with BG, I had a chance to visit with him on site on Friday. They'll, as soon as the pedestal pour is complete, they'll move right into the portion of the dome that will house the steel tank. They've purchased all the steel. The steel is en route from their warehouse to the site, and so we're coordinating where construction crews will leave, and then the steel fabricators will be there on site with the large crane that would eventually put the steel tank at the top. And so, having said all of that, if they can stay on the current aggressive schedule they're on, I think maybe why we're not getting a date is maybe they won't realize that extended delay that they had been anticipating. But we need to respond to them in 30 days, which we have, and so now our 30 days is just a rolling calendar until they actually offer this clarification. So I know that we had talked several times about bringing it back before you. It's not fallen off of city staff radar. We're just, like I said, we just haven't had the clarification from Caldwell yet. But there is significant progress at the site. So I think that's the end goal anyway. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have. If not, I'll ask Mr. Porter to do the financial report. Thank you.
Mr. Porter.
All right. Our February 2023 financial report is included in the council packet as well as printed at the dais. We've completed almost 17% of the fiscal year through 2 months, and that represents our results are collections of 24% of revenue estimates and about 14% of our expenditure budget authority across all city budgeted funds. A big step at the end of February was the closing date on February 28th for Series 2023A temp notes. That refunded the majority of the cost of the 2022C temp notes that were issued back in March of 2022. We had several moving pieces with that, and all were completed satisfactory, and so we're moving forward into the completion of the construction project financing with those remaining proceeds. We also have budget amendments that we do anticipate bringing back to you for a couple funds. The Special Highway Fund to adjust for the expectations of the contract just approved earlier this evening, as well as our water and sewer capital funds to help factor in the delivery of the water meters previously authorized in 2022 in December that are coming in, we hope, in about a month for the replacement of about 700 of our water meters across the utility, as well as sewer funding for the sewer expansion design and construction costs that are coming later this year. Looking forward into the report, pages 2 and 3 illustrate major fund revenues and expenses, utility and non-utility capital funds revenues and expenses, and they compare last year to this year as well as this year's budget. All are satisfactory or on track with what we anticipated. Looking at major revenues, that was interesting. We want to highlight first sales tax performance. It's still very early in the year, so it's very easy to be off by a margin from projections. But city sales and use tax are 21% ahead of budget and 12% ahead of last year. So that reflects the months of collections of November and December last year. So those are both outstanding results for 2 months of the year so far. The share of the county sales tax is actually really closely aligned at 20% ahead of budget and 7.5% ahead of last year. So not quite on pace with the change, with the differences, but still very positive and in the right direction. So we're thrilled to see that performance. Moving on into the report, page 5 of 12 illustrates for the general fund and the capital projects fund some expenditures to date and percent of budget, which are both funds in very good position. And finally, page 6 of the report highlights some new details that we provided special for tonight's meeting because it aligned with our street maintenance project. I want to bring your attention to the graph at the top of that page. It highlights on the left-hand side the axis of total expenditures by year from 2016 through this year's proposed expense. And so you can see that those expenditure levels in prior years have not approached what we're planning to spend this year on the contracted and city performed work. The right-hand axis shows percent of expenditure budget spent in the special highway fund. And in the previous discussion, we highlighted the growth in fund balance over the years, in the last 3 years at least, for the special highway fund. One of the biggest reasons is last year, 2022, when we spent a little less than 70% of our expenditure budget authority. And so a lot of that was based on the excellent bid outcomes we had for the curb replacement work in Willow Point subdivision. And the accumulation of those unspent funds is one of the reasons we're in a good position right now with fund balance levels. The middle chart I won't spend too much time on. In the bottom of that page, one thing that Mr. Heskett reminded me of was my math included miles of street and lanes are 2 directions. So if you would just take that center column of percent of total street network impacted by annual work plans and please divide it by 2. So this year we're at about 18 or 17.8%. And I can do that kind of math. Any more complex and we're not doing it mentally. And then in prior years, our previous high was just a little over 10.5% back in 2018 when we did more rejuvenation and less mill and overlay. So again, just sort of a recap of the extra resources we've been able to bring through the infrastructure sales tax commitment and the special highway fund commitment and the diligent work of Kent Heskett in getting these scopes of work done every year and the projects completed on time. So we're thrilled to show the results of that, and just so you're aware as well, the aggregate total of that 6-year span of work, if you include this year, is that we've touched or improved the equivalent of 54% of the total street network. So that doesn't account for some streets being touched twice if we did the curb last year and the street this year, but just to kind of frame it, over half the streets in the city in 6 years have had some kind of attention and improvement, and that's a testament to that dedication and funding the work. That's one of the hardest parts of that. So we're thrilled to report that and look forward to continuing that effort to avoid more costly replacement activities that would really restrict how much we could impact each year. Any questions about that before we move on? Okay. The last 2 pages, or the next 2 pages of the report, just highlight the water tower project and the Church Street Bridge project and where we stand to date. Based on the design activity with BG Consultants for the sewer plant improvements, we'll also add a monthly tracker for that project, just for your reference, that shows % of project design completed and billing completed to date. We also, the last couple pages of the report include 2023 budget initiatives and 2024 budget development timeline, which we look forward to a little over a month and a half away. The capital maintenance and improvements plan is the next step, and we'll communicate with you soon about possible dates to hold that discussion. And finally, the last 2 pages of the report are expenditure budget remaining by fund and fund balance. And all in all, a really good month, and we're excited to be moving forward on some great projects this year. And happy to take any questions you might have.
Any questions, council?
Just a quick one. On page 1 about the ARPA funds,
Yes.
is the amount there, the 765,000, is that the amount that's currently held as of February 28th, or was that just what was there after the deposit in June?
That is the deposit amount.
Okay. No, I mean, it says after you received 426,000, that left funding at 765,858. Is that what is there now? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's it.
Any further questions?
Good work, Dan.
As always.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Brakovich?
Not this evening, Mayor, thanks.
Thank you. City Attorney agenda, Ms. Kirstelich?
No items, Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem agenda, Ms. Stevens?
I was going to reinforce the notion of adding recycling at your home because of the minimal cost. Chris Donnelly had already mentioned that, so maybe there's a way that we can, maybe on the website or feature it in the newsletter, talking about, yes. And not just letting people know that it's affordable, but telling them exactly how they can sign up for it would be another way to show them the house. I think people might not be, against the idea, but just simplifying it for busy folks might be another step too.
Thanks, Ms. Stevens. City Council agenda? Anyone have anything?
I have just one item for Kent. Kent, is there any way we could get some mulch or something in the park area in Stone Creek there in the bottom underneath? Because it's almost all mud now, and it's pretty heavily used. And,
Yeah, I think there's funds available in the special fund.
to fill that up a
Let's
straight.
track down who we got that from last time and have this special type of mulch for the kids.
It'd be real helpful. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Cool. Mayor agenda, I don't have anything. I cede the rest of my time to Mr. Dale.
And with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Too good at that.
I'm getting
See you in a
comfortable.
couple weeks.